Want to start with a little tales from the couch. Very locked into Cleveland, Philadelphia. So that's the main game that I'm going to focus on. I'll give you a couple nuggets on that Pacers comeback against the Hawks. So if you look at it coming in, let's look at Cleveland's lineup. They're just having issues getting any of these guys, or at least all five of them on the floor at the same time. It rarely happens for them. Garland's missed 5 games. Mitchell was out last night. He's missed 4 games. He has the hamstring thing now. Okoro's missed 8. Jared Allen's missed 5. So they just haven't had that group together for a long time. And that's why there's just certain teams. Like, I don't care what Phoenix's record is. I care what it looks like when all those guys are playing. I don't care what Denver's record is going to be right now because it's not going to be as good without Murray. So there's just going to be teams maybe 25 games in. We start looking at the record and you'll say, hey, what's wrong with them? And you're just going to like go back and look at who they've had. And so Cleveland's stats aren't nearly as good as they were last year. They're 21st in offense, 13th in defense. Philly's 3rd in offense, 11th in defense. So, there's Cleveland last year statistically the best defense. So you could say it's a big step back. Maybe it's going to be a little bit different. But the point is, like, it may not really, well, at least it doesn't matter to me until all the guys are consistently playing together. Let's start at the fourth quarter, 88-79 Cavs up. They were up even bigger earlier in this one. Embiid starts on the bench. Maxey starts with that next unit. The same thing they do at the start of the second quarter, carry him over. Cleveland, whoa, man. When I was looking at it, I was like, these are the 5 that are out there. It's Dean Wade, Max Strus, Jared Allen, George Niang, and Craig Porter Jr. May not have heard of him, but he actually played well. He had a big moment that we'll get to later. But he's kind of a nice player in the way that you would watch him go. And I think that guy's actually going to play in the league a long time, even though most of us would not know who he is. Some notes on Strus here. 14 games with Cleveland now. He's playing 36 minutes a game. That's a career high. That's about an 7-minute jump from where he was last season with Miami, where he primarily came off the bench, depending on injury stuff, though. And so the traditional numbers are up. He's 15 points. He's getting you 6 boards, which is almost double what he did with Miami. And he's getting you double the assists with 4 a game. The shooting numbers so far pretty good, kind of what you'd expect. He was 41%, 35% last 2 years with Miami. He's 37% this year with Cleveland. The metrics are okay. There is a bit of a bump there from Miami. The metrics don't love Max Strus, but the reality is that post-Miami with a kind of player like him, I'm like, I wonder if there's going to be this post-Miami drop-off. Not the case, and they desperately needed him last night with Mitchell out. So there was the Garland issue where he was out at the start of the fourth. They had to figure out a way to try to save his minutes somewhat because he's such a big part of the offense when Mitchell's out of the game. But it looked like he hurt his right hand bad. Like, he clearly hurt it, because then when he hurt it at the end of the third quarter, he tried to bring the ball up, but he didn't even want to get into his right hand. Then he made a mistake. Some notes on Maxey here. He gets wherever he wants. I know you already know this, but when you watch it play out over the course of the game and you think of some of the great scorers in this league and all of us readjusting what the ceiling is for Tyrese Maxey. When you can get to the floor wherever you want, whenever you want, like he can, it may be the most valuable skill you can have on a basketball floor. Like, I know shooting is great, but if you're a completely dependent scoring player, meaning somebody else has to get you into your shooting rhythm, or you're just there to provide space because of a corner, but on top of everything else, Maxey can shoot. So it's a really, really dangerous combination for not the biggest guy, but when he decides and he has an angle, and then the way he changes up the finish and the release at the rim, it's brutal. There's really not much that you can do with him. Oddly enough, it looked like Cleveland was actually defending Maxey with Dean Wade. At first, I just figured, okay, maybe this is a transition pickup thing. Maybe it's a mix-up. I mean, it happens over the course of the game, but it looked like Cleveland actually wanted to have Dean Wade on him. And one time it was after a make. And so I kind of realized, I was like, I think this might be the assignment. Then I saw it a little bit later too. So, you add that into everything else. Strus was on him more because they didn't want to have Garland with that kind of burden. 8-18, Embiid comes in, the leading scorer in the NBA today. He immediately gets Mobley's 4th foul. Mobley got in foul trouble immediately in this game. He had 2 quick ones. And it was the raise the arms right into him. You're like, okay. 97-90, Embiid gets Dean Wade on the Trae Young drive, where that's where you just drive with no intention of making the shot whatsoever, and you drive into the body and throw the ball up. And it's like, I can't stand when Trae Young gets it. I was like, now Embiid's getting this call too. So when you're watching Cleveland on offense as Philadelphia's chipping away at this lead with incredible defense and also scoring, I think, at one point 9 of 11 points from the free throw line, Cleveland had just a real problem because Garland's trying to be the only guy that can unlock anything happening for him offensively. I mean, as I was watching this, I'm like, how is Cleveland going to win this game? So other than Strus, there really wasn't anyone you can run a play for. I am monitoring the Jared Allen hand situation. I don't know if we have an Ayton Gobert deal here, but he had some real fumbles there late, and especially if you're going to double Garland and then you're going to throw it to Allen, and then Allen has to make a decision where he still can make some good decisions, and overall stats were terrific last night, like 20 and 13. But there were enough plays in there where it was alarming, where he was deep in the paint on the catch, and it was just kind of chaotic. I don't think it's as bad as Ayton Gobert, but like I said, I will be monitoring this. And then as far as Mobley, when you're struggling offensively to just get a good possession in there, and Mobley's either just standing in the corner, but then you don't want to bring too much attention into the paint by having some weird hybrid 80s, two guys on the block. I mean, that doesn't even happen anymore. I'm not saying it should, but you can't really run a play for Mobley where the play is with him ending in an offensive decision. And despite, look, he put up some numbers last night too. And what I'm focusing on here as I'm recapping the fourth and overtime is dismissing, a lot of the good offensive stuff that Cleveland did in the beginning, and where the box score shows you're like, well, how bad of a game could he have had? Like, those numbers look pretty good. But when it came down to kind of those crunch time moments and you're watching, you're like, Garland's really stuck here because there's just other dudes. Dean Wade's out there for spacing in theory, but he's, 31% from three on the season. He's 36 for his career, so whatever. He was 0-4 last night, didn't make any threes. And then Mobley's just kind of hovering. Now, they did change that later in overtime, which I'll get to. So Embiid's defense was incredible late in this game. It also took a toll on him, I thought, a little bit later. It's just asking him to do a lot of things, and whether it was him actually getting the block or completely altering someone's confidence as they got close to the rim, it was a real issue for Cleveland, and Embiid deserves a ton of credit for that. Let's talk a bit about these two Maxey plays against Max Strus in transition. One turns into a flagrant because Maxey was smart enough to stay on the floor long enough. So, of course, they do it. The ref's like, if you stay on the floor, they're like, all right, we better review this. I didn't love that it was a flagrant. I didn't think that Strus was actually waving his arms down to like really get Maxey, especially with the way he landed on the whole deal. But there's essentially no way you can win. And don't worry, I've got a couple minutes on this later, where if Maxey is just going to go right into you, and I mean this for the league in general, if the player is just going to go right into you as you're like, the refs are getting to a point where you might as well just be better off getting out of the way. All right? So let's put that in our pockets collectively here before I go back to that one. So Maxey gets Strus twice with that. There was a goaltend on another one that ended up being an and one. It's 104-103. Then at 108, I'm looking at Pat Bev, and I wrote down, what does Pat Bev do? I know that seems harsh. When he has the ball, there's no real advancement of anything. Like, I'm not talking about bringing the ball up from left to right. I'm talking about like when he has the ball and then he passes. Like, what are those passes? It's usually just, I'm bringing the ball up. Now you start what we're doing. And he doesn't seem to want to shoot at all right now. He's shooting 11% from three. That's obviously going to change. He was 34%, I believe, last year. He had a couple great plays. One at the very end of regulation that was clearly very important, where Mobley got him really deep, almost underneath the rim. And then Mobley on the catch, Pat Bev pulled the chair from underneath him. Really smart defensive play. Also speaks a little bit to Mobley, like, hey, man. Then there was another play where he set an incredible screen on Mobley at the free throw line, like really got his elbows right into his hip and pinned him, and it got Harris free. But then Mobley did something even more amazing than the screen, where he recovered to actually block the shot, which seemed like there was no chance that that was going to happen. So as I'm sitting there, I'm kind of going like, maybe a little bit more Jaden Springer, or at least comes in. Maybe it's a little erratic, but it's a ton of energy, and you spent the pick on the guy. But then at the end of regulation, he gets the offensive rebound. He doesn't even seem like he wants the ball, gets it out, gets it back, doesn't look like he's going to shoot it, then makes the runner, makes it 110-108. So that is what Pat Bev still is capable of doing. The play on Mobley, an incredible screen there, and then fights for the offensive rebound in a huge, huge spot and then hits the floater. But I would say long term, the 20-plus minutes from Pat Bev, there's a lot of stuff in there that doesn't really seem like it's doing anything. So, again, monitoring. He did foul Garland. That was a questionable play. Looked like Garland initiated a lot of that contact. He hits the free throws, unlike the Celtics. 110 apiece, and we head into overtime. Mobley took one field goal attempt in the fourth quarter. He's averaging 3.3 field goal attempts in the fourth, because I was looking at that, which is actually second on the Cavs behind Mitchell. And there was another play that we'll get to here, Embiid defensively, which continued the issues that I was having with Mobley. Mobley, they actually changed things they were doing. I like that Bickerstaff tried to change the way they looked at the start of some of their possessions. He was actually bringing the ball up and handling it off. There was even a play where he brought it up and then got it to Strus, set the screen for Strus, then an incredible cut. Strus hits him, but then it's an air ball layup against Embiid. It was all because Embiid was in front of him. Like, he freaked, and he's a couple feet away from the rim, air ball. The next side, though, the next play, they ran the same play on the other side where Mobley is working with Strus, gets it to him. So Mobley was more like involved, like as a ball handler. But it was at least a different look than just Garland trying to probe the entire time, hoping somebody else could hit a shot if he couldn't get clear. So they ran that one, and this is where Mobley's terrific, because his passing has always been incredible, even going back to the year at SC, where I was like, God, this guy makes some incredible passes. And then Allen's coming from the other side. He gets the dunk. It's 114-112 Cleveland. Both teams looked exhausted. And then at 116 apiece, Craig Porter, of all people, who got subbed in for Wade, good substitution there, goes right at Embiid for the layup, makes it 118-116. Tobias Harris hits a three. Sixers are up one. And then Porter Jr. again off a Cleveland offensive rebound. He has the ball. The shot clock is lower. He's totally calm, drives into the paint, is looking at Embiid. Embiid's in a tough spot because he's playing kind of the penetration, but then also has to worry about Allen in the baseline. He makes Porter passes it to Allen, perfect assist. And again, like, just really calm, and they go up a point there. On the other end, Maxey misses the close layup. Embiid got called for his sixth. The foul was totally on Pat Bev, so maybe that would have changed the last possession there. And that's your final score. This is going to be a bit of a rant. This isn't specifically about Maxey. It's not specifically about the Embiid initiating contact. This is the game I was most focused on. You've heard my rants on Trae Young. I don't need to do it a million times. And it's weird because as I see Maxey succeed like this, and one of the big no-nos with NBA teams is, as great as a small guard is, they feel like small guards are going to hurt you in the playoffs because they're going to get hunted more. They're going to get screened to death. They're going to be issues you're going to have defensively if you're trying to live with a really small guard. However, in the regular season, with the way these games are officiated now, I almost wonder if you're prepping for the draft, if you should go, well, look, I can live with a small guard if he has this kind of scoring capabilities, because they're going to give him every fucking call now. I don't know why the refs do this. And I'm not a complaint about the ref guy. I'd like to think I'm not, like, sitting around all day Sunday watching the NFL just bitching about flags. It's pointless to me. But I'm talking about the evolution of the game. I'm talking about where the game is going at certain times, where I'm like, why is this being rewarded? Because the problem is, when the player's rewarded and it's not their fault, they're going to keep doing it over and over again. The coaching staffs are going to say, hey, the refs give you this call. Their personal trainers are going to say, hey, keep doing this stuff. And all that refs have to do is get together collectively and say, stop rewarding this stuff. When Maxey goes right at Strus, as Strus is backpedaling in transition, he's not reaching. He's not trying. There was one play where he had his right hand, I think, on his shoulder. But for the general purpose of my diatribe here, it's unbelievable to me that the league lets elements of the game evolve into what isn't fun to watch and makes it fucking pointless even playing defense. And when we had Monty on, there were certain things I'm like, hey, how come this or how come that? And look, he's not going to tell me, yeah, everybody's doing a bad job. But this is bad. It's bad for everybody. It has nothing to do with the team. It has nothing to do with the player. It's bullshit. And I have moments when I watch these games, and again, it's kind of fresh because we're 15 games into it. And as much as I love the league, I go, this is impossible. Like I looked at it this morning. There's 42 players averaging 20 points per game right now in the NBA. 10 years ago, it was 11. Now, it's early. Guys that look fresh now will not be fresh later. That number will go down a little bit. There's 34 players attempting 5 free throw attempts per game right now. 10 years ago, it was 17. Now you can find, I just did 10 and then 20 or whatever. Go back to another year, some of those numbers are going to be going up. But like 42 players averaging 20 a game and 10 years ago it being 11. Like that's a thing. The shooters are better than ever before. The offense is better than ever before. So the shot making, the talent, we've covered all of this. It's never been better. So this isn't, the 90s are awesome because there's a hard foul video from the Pistons. But if the guys are this good, on top of all you have to do is initiate the contact every time, and you're going to get rewarded, I don't know how you're supposed to play defense, especially in some of the transition stuff. You can't reward the offensive player every time he initiates the contact. And that's where we're headed. And I'm just telling you, you got to get in front of this because there's certain games you're like, this is pointless. Rant over. Let's talk a game that looked like everybody got a call, but honestly, everybody made the shots. If you watched Pacers Atlanta last night, 157-152, you know it was actually awesome. It was fun. It wasn't some all-star. It was an all-star score, but it wasn't all-star effort. Everybody literally just made everything. Atlanta had 86 in the first half. Atlanta's offense is 4th in the league. The Pacers are number 1. Defensive numbers not that great this morning. Atlanta's 24th. The Pacers are 29th. Atlanta was up 20 in the first half. Halliburton goes for 26 in the third. They closed the game. It was almost like, Quinn looked at Carlisle and said, you just want to play all the small guys like a halftime event for youth basketball? Let's do it. Halliburton at one point, Atlanta tried to double him. Then you get the best, well, not the best, but one of the best, this is why it's always funny. He's like, how come you don't double him? How come you don't double him? All right, go ahead, double Halliburton. Guess what he's going to do? He's tall enough, especially with him, too. It's not like you're doubling Trey. You're doubling Halliburton. He just dumps it down to Bruce Brown. Now it's 4-on-3 in the backside. You have 2 defenders 30 feet away from the basket, handoff to Obi Toppin dunk. And we're like, all right, don't want to do that again. Halliburton at one point was looking for Trey. And then the other end, it felt like everybody from Atlanta was looking for Buddy Hield. Trae Young hit an incredible 3. And then DeJounte brought it down, and he had Hield. And I almost felt like Trey was looking at him being like, I'm kind of hot right now. Can I have the ball back? And then Murray just drove at Hield and made a ridiculous layup. And then you think, well, you can't even be mad at anybody for taking a shot because they're all going in. It was really like a high-level offensive game as far as the shot making. Halliburton got Trey up 155-152. He was going to have to take the shot. Atlanta needed to stop. He hunts Trey, and Trey got him. Trey got the ball away from him. Atlanta doesn't get it done on the other side. Pacers get the defensive stop. Barely. Let's take a look real quickly, though, at who Halliburton has been this season. And I know you already know this if you're paying attention to it. But when he was coming out of Iowa State, my favorite thing about him was he sees stuff on the floor. When I'd watch him in college, in a college game, you're like, he sees stuff that the other 9 guys have no idea what's even happening. But you're like, I wonder if he's going to be this good of a shooter. And I mean specifically as like a lead scorer. Because with his shot, I always wonder, does he need a little bit more of a runway to get into the shot? And there are still times where I'll be like, maybe I'm seeing that. But for the most part, that's not really the case. He's at 52% overall on 16 shots. So it's 25 a game. It's not like he's taking a million shots here. He's 46% from 3. He has been over 40 every year of his career. So whatever concerns I had about like how clear does he need to be off the dribble to get these shots off, it just doesn't matter. And it was definitely something I think was at least fair to look at when he was in college. 41% from 3, 41, 42, 40, and again, 46. I don't know if he's going to keep that up. And then you throw in the 12 assists a game. He is remarkable. They're the best offense. I don't know how serious we take them defensively. Okay, this leads us in perfectly to the angriest guy on the NBA last night, Jalen Suggs, for the Orlando Magic in a Toronto matchup. Orlando got out early. They are huge. The defensive numbers are really good. Let's do a little Magic Minute with Ceruti.
Let's go. Ryan, you know that I've been for the last couple years. Like I've just I haven't given up on Jalen Suggs. Also didn't give up on Jonathan Isaac, by the way. And that's it's looking pretty good right now. Shout out to the Minister of Defense. But specifically Jalen Suggs, because people like year one, even last year, just clowning on this guy, being like, wow, the Magic really blew this pick. And I kept watching games just being like, I think he's good though. Like I know the stats, I know the shooting's not great, but I just watch him play basketball, and he does a lot of like winning things. Like he makes incredibly great hustle plays. He knows where to be at the right time. And yeah, do I wish that he was shooting a little bit better from three? Yeah, but this season he is an absolute man possessed. So I'll get to that in a second. But I just want to say right now, because we're going to do a Magic Minute. It's going to go a little bit longer than a minute, so apologies to people who don't care. But I think people should care because they're 9-5. They're a legitimately good basketball team. And I'm kind of one of those guys who's a pessimistic fan for my own teams. I typically am like, I don't know. I'm not afraid to bet against my own teams for sure. I've done it plenty of times. But I think I'm wondering if we have to reassess what this year for the Magic, like what the goals are, what they could realistically be in the East. Because before the season, I'm telling you, all right, I think it's, playing would be great. Could they potentially sneak into the 6th seed? That'd be an incredible season. And now that I look at it and I look at how nasty they are on defense and how even without 2 starters, by the way, Fultz and Wendell Carter have been out for a significant amount of time. Like this team is good. I think they're a legitimately good team in the East. So you look at it and you go, all right, they're not better than Boston. They're not better than Milwaukee. They're not better than Philly. But then there's that next group of teams. And I'll say, all right, they're not going to be better than Miami in the playoffs. There's the Cavs, there's the Knicks, there's the Hawks. Are any of those teams significantly better than the Magic? And again, we're, 13, 14 games into the season. I'm kind of talking myself into, like, is the play-in actually not enough of a goal this season? Before the year, I'd have been like, all right, yeah, they're probably a shooter and a year away from really being like a firm playoff team in the East. But I kind of wonder if they can be that now. Again, number 1 defensive rating in the NBA. Jalen Suggs is like a hurricane on defense. He right now would be a first-team all defensive player. I just think this team, Paolo's been playing incredible after a weird start. Franz not shooting well, but he's still second in defensive rating behind Jason Tatum. I think I'm wondering if I have to rethink what the ceiling for this team is this year, Ryan. Am I being too much of a homer? You know me, I'm not usually a homer. I'm actually very realistic and pessimistic about most of my teams, but I think they're actually kind of a good team in the East, like a really good. They're not in that elite 1, 2, 3, 4 tier, but could they be the 5 or the 6 seed? Yeah, I think they could.
Okay, I'm with you on this one because I've watched them enough where I think even some of the early season struggles are all baked into that fourth quarter. Like I was looking at their offensive efficiency in the fourth quarter this morning. It's 29th. I was surprised it was that high.
Yeah, it's not great.
I thought it'd be lower. But it felt just clunky. I don't know that it was, they have this massive problem. Like even, in the massive open on Cleveland, like you could just see late in the game, like, I don't know where the offense is going to come from here. And that's why I'm kind of shocked they won that game. Where when Orlando gets stagnant, I think it's still some of the newness of the pieces and like, how does everybody kind of fit in here? Where I think the best thing you can have is Paolo initiating most of the offense, but it's just not going to happen with all the guards. I think Cole's done a good job of accepting kind of where he is. Because with Cole before, I used to always go, this guy's going to take the shot here. Like he's going to want to hit the big shot and he's going to ignore everybody else. And I think he's readjusted that. But they're huge. I think about what Oklahoma City has built, which is one of my favorite teams to watch, and how seamlessly every piece on the roster seems to fit in with each other. But, as I was told by another team, they're like, what Presti's trying to do is get all of these decision makers on the floor at the same time. And if they're also really long, that's a plus. It's the Ousmane Dieng draft pick. Like he may not be anything, but when you were like, okay, he fits the profile of what he's trying to do. And then Chet's added into all these really good on-ball decision makers that also can score a little bit. Orlando feels a little bit like that.
They're bigger. I mean,
they're bigger. There's not as much offensive like tempo. Like Franz can make the decisions. Paolo certainly can. Anthony Black kind of fits that mold a little bit. Wendell, I actually trust a lot. You're not going to be setting up your offense and running it through him the entire time. Cole's going to break you down a little bit more. And if Suggs keeps himself at 35% with his defense, and he was like furious last night. It was really funny.
I had a guy tweet me being like, does he usually play like this? Or is this just like something? He's usually insane. But last night, I don't know. Maybe it was because he's probably heard a lot of the chatter coming from Toronto about how, because weirdly, again, and I like Scotty Barnes. Like I don't have anything against the Raptors team, but weirdly, like Raptors fans they love to chirp about that draft class and like whether or not the Magic screwed up the Jalen pick or the Franz pick. And I think there's like a little bit of insecurity there. I think everybody was happy. Both teams were happy with how those drafts turned out. But I wonder if there was like a little added thing there to be like, wow, like the Raptors were supposed to take Jalen Suggs in that draft. They kind of didn't. Surprised everybody took Scotty Barnes. And, you know, he was kind of getting shit on for the first couple years of his career because he didn't really have it figured out, certainly on offense. And, man, he came out like just possessed last night early. He had a sequence early in the game where he knocks down a three, and then he makes a diving steal that gets deflected to Paolo. Paolo takes it, passes it out, kicks it out on the fast break to Franz for a wide open three. That just sums up Jalen Suggs in one sequence of, 30 seconds of basketball. He's just a menace. And so I don't know. Yeah.
How about the touchdown pass?
Was a quarterback in high school. You could argue he would be. Shout out to Steven Ruiz. He might be able to make Steven Ruiz's top quarterback rankings with some of the quarterbacks that are being trotted out, like Tim Boyle this weekend. But I just love watching that guy play. And the other thing I'll say about Paolo, is he had kind of a weird start to the season. But last 10 games, he's at 22 points a game, 7 rebounds, 4.3 assists, shooting 50% for the field and nearly 47% from three. He's incredible. And he's been better defensively as well. And, I know notoriously I think the Magic should take Chet in the draft guy. I still am not selling any of my Chet stock. I think Chet could potentially be better than Paolo eventually. But I think what we could clearly see is both those guys went to the right team. The Magic needed a guy like Paolo probably more than they needed a guy like Chet. And Chet is a perfect fit in OKC. So again, it's one of those draft things where I think everybody's happy.
To summarize, though, I don't think it's crazy to wonder if Orlando can get into that top 6. Milwaukee with all their defensive stuff, like if you haven't checked the standings here in a while, they're 10-4. They've won 5 in a row. If you want to start playing the point differential stuff, Philly's point differential is far better than Milwaukee's, but they lose last night. I guess they lose the tiebreaker, both 10-4. Miami, after a rough start, has been really good. The point differential is lower than, whatever. It's 14 games in. I'm not going to get super worked up about the point differential at this point, because you also have the added part of with the in-season tournament games, which I think are going to be even better moving forward, because now when you're watching these games and then you'll see the final product of it this season, then you'll think differently about the in-season tournament games next season. Like once you know what the ending is, you're going to go, oh, okay. And I think the intensity in some of these games has been really good with it too. But then when you factor in point differential in the standings and all that kind of stuff, I don't know, maybe point differential, I don't know if it'll be more valuable, less valuable, all that stuff. But Orlando has a pretty good one. Despite the beginning of the year, watching them just clog up so much offensively in the fourth quarter, I was like, what is going on? But I didn't think it was I didn't think it was unfixable, is my point.
Magic Celtics Friday is a big game. How many big games do we have in November in the NBA typically? The winner of that game, if the Celtics win, they're likely going to win the group. If the Magic win it, they need a little bit of help from the Raptors. But it's like a huge regular season game in Orlando. Like there's going to be the intensity level in that game is going to be higher than a normal regular season game. I think the in-season stuff has been fantastic.
There you go. The Magic 5 minutes.
Are we back?
That was
who knows? They'll probably go on a 5-game. They play, by the way, Denver and Boston next to. So like. There could be a quick, dose of humble pie coming here fast, but I think they just give teams fits, man. I think they're one of the top 5, probably most annoying teams in the league to play. So I'll take it.
Okay, done.